This is the KJ Singh Show with your host KJ Singh. Not another day goes by without a highly esteemed, highly respectable journalist, which is quite an oxymoron because journalism is on its on its knees right now, considering that the vast majority of journalism is client journalism, in that they are there to support a certain establishment narrative. Vast majority of journalists were just given the green light to the genocide in its initial 5 to 6 months. And only now that you can see some of them come, and just tell it like it is, or rather have some smidgen of truth, because of course it's very obvious to a lot of us how obvious the lying is. Otherwise the whole organization would be deemed as just irrelevant if they weren't discussing any of the facts on the ground. But then you have this type of journalist who actually, who do not insult the profession. Recently we had Briahna Joy Gray kicked out from The Hill. The Hill was supposed to be an anti-establishment news media organization, which obviously was just a front. It was never a anti-establishment. Crystal Ball and Cigar, they both were on Hill, and they established this dual polar kind of narrative, left and right, but not within the confines of the establishment. They are both beyond the establishment. They were questioning the establishment, questioning their own, the party associated with their political allegiances. And when Katie Halper was employed as a contributor to The Hill, and she was kicked out from The Hill, The Hill lied when she was kicked out and said there were other reasons other than what she was saying, which was the truth about Israel being an apartheid state, which at the time that she said it, 12 human rights organizations had already agreed that Israel is an apartheid state. So obviously there's an ideological underpinning to The Hill, despite it being supposed to be for free speech and anti-establishment, clearly. And now we have Briahna Joy Gray, who wanted to be part of The Hill under the conditions that, she wouldn't be fired like Katie Halper were. She would be speaking the truth, but without being impeded by the higher-ups. And it was a bet, really, because she knew in the end that she would be coming under scrutiny and eventually be fired for speaking her truth. And fired she did. And so, and so the scrutiny that she was under began on October 7th, when she began talking about the truth of what's going on. But the final, let's say, nail on the coffin of her career there, behind, in the room of the higher-ups, was an out-of-context clip in which she was interviewing the sister of a hostage from Israel. And this person was talking and spouting propagandist points, which has now been refuted, and was already refuted when she talked to Briahna Joy Gray, in that there was mass, rape claims, the mass rape claims that happened on October 7th. This is weaponization of sexual violence to justify a genocide. And we've seen already that there would, the propagandists, the right wing in Israel would use any kind of, utilize any argumentation to justify mass ethnic slaughter, mass ethnic cleansing, in order to really wash the land of Gaza, so that there is no self-determination of the Palestinians that would be a threat to this colonial entity. So Briahna Joy Gray, she was interviewing her, and this highly, unfortunately, when you meet great suffering and you meet a tragic situation, some people just resort to lies and deception, and they internalize a victim narrative rather than understanding what's going on. Without they're not having a real kind of real deep contemplation on the suffering of all sides. That it's all just, I'm the victim, and they just contract rather than expand into understanding. When I'm saying contract, they contract into ideology. They contract into just propagandist points. They're just swallowing the lines from the politicians. They're not really assessing the situation at hand. They're not assessing that this is a cycle of violence that's continued on from decade to decade to decade, because of course the dehumanization of Palestinians is necessary for the colonialism project of Israel. And Gideon Levy said, there's three parts of the dehumanization of the Palestinians, or rather the necessity to ignore the voice of the Palestinians, which is, one, that Zionist Jews believe that they are God's chosen people. So that obviously that would give you a sense of entitlement. That would give you a sense of supremacy. The second is that they're their perpetual victim. That even when you're not the victim, even when you're on the other side of the fence of a concentration camp, you're still the victim. Which, I mean, one has to understand. One has to really question. Like, I believe definitely 100% in teaching children about the Holocaust. But will there be part of that education that clearly show that there are people who misuse the Holocaust to justify a political project for an agenda, to justify mass ethnic cleansing and slaughter of the Palestinian people? Are we going to discuss that in our curriculum? And a third reason, as Gideon Levy, brilliant man, said, the dehumanization of Palestinians, which is, you can just go back to Moshe Shmelansky, who said that these are semi-primitive people, and they have, they've got savage concepts. It's their nature, apparently. In 1914, even before Balfour Declaration. So when we put all this together, then lies are necessary to the project, because of course they know that the outside world don't see their nation state project in the same way that they do, because it's a self-serving project. So they need to, in a self-serving way, project an image out there that is actually clean, in just and in service of goodness and righteous indignation. And this is why lies are a big part of the project. And this is what Briahna Joy Gray called out. And Briahna Joy Gray does not hold back. She is a bit kind of like George Galloway in a way, or Norman Finkelstein. They all like to give it as they get. And she got fired because, of course, she the person that she was interviewing was dishing out lies in terms of Briahna Joy Gray is not believing women, using the social justice argument of emotional manipulation, in order to push forward a propagandist point that is now found out to be lies, is that there was mass rapes happening on October 7th. This is all lies. And we already know from hostages that the hostages were treated humanely, unlike the hostages that are treated in Israeli jails of Palestinians. They're not treated humanely, and you can see a huge transformation of people going in with black hair, coming out with white hair. How do you explain that in 8 months of detention? You can't explain it unless you're undergoing severe, intense stress. So upon hearing the propagandist points by this, person who's related to one of the hostages, Briahna Joy Gray just sighed and did a semi-heart, eye roll, which she wasn't doing it in response to the mass grape. She was doing it in response to the weaponization of the mass grapes in order to push a political idea, political agenda, in order to justify what happens following October 7th, which is mass genocide, mass ethnic cleansing. And, Briahna Joy Gray, in typical based fashion, still continues on Twitter on Bad Faith, which is her YouTube channel, which is kind of ironic considering that she's been attacked in a bad faith manner. But this is where we are. Like, good journalists, and it's not just Briahna Joy Gray, as most of you may know. In the UK, we had Sangeeta Maiska, who's questioning an Israeli representative, spokesperson, and the spokesperson didn't like her questioning, and so subsequent to that, she was fired. And she was actually very good. She was very well liked. There's all kinds of petitions to bring her back or have LBC answer for her. And then we had, obviously, Mehdi Hassan. In fact, there's no reason to even watch MSNBC now, because, of course, his show was the only reason to watch it. He was one of the most meaningful journalists on a corporate gig. And he was fired for obviously questioning Israeli representatives as well. Not really detailing, why he was fired, but we already know. We know very clearly. But these are the people who've been recently fired. In the past, we had Mark Lamont Hill. We had a few others, including Katie Helper. We had also journalists in Palestine being killed, of course, like which I cannot recall, unfortunately. But journalists being killed, and we've been having journalists being killed in Palestine proper too. 117 journalists being killed since the genocidal operation. And obviously Candace Owen, she was also fired. And it's interesting, these Zionist racist supremacists don't really like the idea of black activists. Because of course we saw Sean King, of course, it was obviously blocked from Instagram too. There's something quite, there's an element of racialism at play here, because the black, black American, black British people, they're the most hated, just as much as the Palestinians are. But maybe that's coincidence, because of course the fact there are more black people who are likely to fight for social justice issues, because of the fact that black people have been dehumanized as well through slavery, through racism, through Jim Crow laws. But there's something to be said about I can see an uptick in Zionists saying the N-word with a hard R at protests, spitting and attacking black people. And we need to really be aware of this. We need to raise our voice, because Palestinian rights matter, Palestinian lives matter is really completely consistent with Black Lives Matter. It's the same. To me, it's the same. We're not similar, we're the same. Because social constructs are really just constructs. The idea of an ethnic group that was created 3,000 or so years ago, that somehow overwrites the lives of other people that are also living there, it's kind of strange. It's based on the ability of the brain to configure and create categories of different people based on arbitrary narratives, arbitrary notions. Because who were the people before they converted to Judaism? Did they matter? Because of course there was a point in time for tens and hundreds of thousands of years where people, the ancestors of the modern day Jews, modern day Palestinians, they had same genetic consistency. And yet when this narrative, social construct was created, somehow they're elevated. It's all fictional nonsense. I do respect, however, people who do believe in Judaism and believe the principles of our brotherhood, of solidarity with humankind. In fact, my heroes are Jewish people, alongside my black brothers and sisters, my Palestinian brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, we are seeing a rise in some Indian brothers and sisters who are, obviously not on the side of Modi, because Modi's another nationalist who sides with Israel. But it's quite telling that they want to, completely wipe out any truth on the matter of Israel, that they're willing to fire popular journalists. And that's a shame to our species, shame on our establishment, on the so-called free speech right-wingers, like Barry Weiss from the free press. It's quite interesting that people who are most likely to deny the meaning of free speech are most likely to call themselves free speech defenders, and yet they don't walk the walk. They just like to talk the talk, and then rest on their laurels, and then go to brunch, and then go to Starbucks, and then call it a day. These people want politics completely removed from reality. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.